Hey fam, welcome to this video where we're going to be talking about Plan Dignidad. We're going to be learning about what it is, the pros, the cons, and if you are in Dreamers in Action, you know exactly what we're going to be discussing today. But if you're not part of Dreamers in Action and you want to become involved, you're a dreamer that wants to get involved, wants to help push the needle forward, I invite you to join our next new member orientation, and you can get access to that link here on the caption of this video. So make sure you stick around. At the end of this video, I'm going to give more information on how to become a new member of DIA if you're interested. Pero pues hay que empezar. El Plan Dignidad probablemente va a ser reintroducido. There's been a lot of talk about that. And so in DIA, Dreamers in Action, we need to learn what it even is, right? Before we make decisions of if we're going to get involved or how we can even get involved in this bill, we need to learn what it even is, right? And that is what this video is about. So you're not going to get to hear about our private conversations because that's where the video cuts, because we don't record that. Our Dreamers in Action meetings are completely private. So if you want to become part of it, you are going to have to join the Dreamers in Action group. But other than that, I do want every single dreamer to understand what Plan Dignidad is. There's a lot of confusion about it. There's a lot of questions. It is a very problematic bill. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a bill that has a lot going on, and it is important for us to understand before we even decide how we can get involved in this, to know all of it. So that is what we're going to be listening to today. Diana, which is our legislative policy director at Dreamers in Action, who is an amazing member and has done some research in learning about Plan Dignidad as it was laid out previously, right? Because it hasn't been introduced now, but she is basing off the information on the previous times that it was introduced. She will be talking to us about what it is, the pros, the cons, and just kind of like understanding everything that this bill includes, which is a lot. So please prepare to like get a little confused with us. There is a lot of learning that needs to happen for this bill as we move forward, but I hope that this information helps you understand what Plan Dignidad is promising. Sale, vale. All right. Thank you, Diana, for taking time to give us some insight on the Plan Dignidad. It's going to be very helpful for our team. So thank you.
Thank you, Julieta. And I did create a presentation, but just so that everybody knows, I created it at work. And when I got home and I transferred the file into my work, to my personal computer, it doesn't look that great. Okay. So for those who are like techie people, don't judge. Okay. I tried my best. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know if you're able to view my screen. Okay. Great. So just like Julieta said, she kind of opened the welcoming for me. So today we're going to overview what is the Dignity Act, why it matters, and then the key provisions of the Act, and then the pros and cons of the Act. So what is the Dignity Act? So Rep. Maria Elvira Salazar, she's a Republican representative in Florida, introduced the Dignity Act, which is H.R. 3599, in the U.S. House of Representatives on May 23rd, 2023. So this was a bipartisan effort to strengthen border security in the United States and to provide undocumented individuals with an opportunity to obtain legal status if they meet certain requirements. It also updates aspects of the U.S. legal immigration system. And so this is not only offering like an adjustment of status and also a legal pathway for 11 billion people, but it's also changing our current immigration system. And as we all know, our current immigration system is very flawed, and it has not been beneficial at all for everybody. Some additional co-sponsors on the bill that are key co-sponsors is Representative Veronica Escobar from Texas, Lori Chavez de Reamer, who is a Republican in Oregon, Mike Lohner, who is a Republican in New York, and Jennifer Gonzalez Cullen, who is also a Republican in Puerto Rico. So just by noticing that, we already know that there is Republican support around this bill. So like I said, this bipartisan effort comes in a new polling. So there was a polling that was done back in 2024 that stated that 4 out of 5 Americans, including 80% of registered Republicans, borders, are in support of working together on an immigration reform, with the focus that it will address labor shortages and inflation, and that it protects the people already living in the United States and contributing to their communities. Unfortunately, with everything that's happening around with deportations right now, the polling goes to show that the American people don't want deportations, but they want a pathway for the folks that are already living within the United States. So during the rollout of the legislation, Representative Salazar indicated that this bill is intended to follow the biblical principles of the Dignity Act and redemption. So what that means is that this bill will aim to focus on modernizing the current immigration system, also for it to meet the economic needs in support American workers. And something interesting here that I found out during my research is that the bill's title stands for Dignity for Immigrants while guarding our nation to ignite and deliver the American Dream Act of 2023. So that's what Dignidad stands for. So the word Dignidad, every letter of the Dignity Act stands for this.
Diana, I was gonna let you know it's still on the first page. Is that okay?
On what is Dignidad Act?
Yeah, what is the Dignidad?
Okay, yeah, I'll move on to that. So, why does the Dignity Act matter? So, like I said, it's a very bipartisan solution in a polarized time. It offers real solutions for millions of undocumented people. It addresses labor shortages in critical industries. It strengthens border security without vilifying immigrants. It helps reduce visa backlogs and modernizes the legal immigration system, and it reflects the real public support. It recognizes immigrants as contributors. And I just realized I was speaking on this slide, and this is a slide I should have been on. So what are the pillars? So with the American Dream and Promise Act, we saw that it had different pillars to it. So this one also has 5 sections. So we're going to go over each section, but Division A is Border and Security of the American Act. Division B is American Dream and Promise. Division C is Improving Seasoned Guest Worker Opportunities. The D is American Agriculture, and Division CE is American Property and Competitiveness. So just so that everybody knows, I'm just going to do a quick comprehensive summary. This is in 2023 when it was introduced. It was introduced as, it was over 500 pages. And then when it went through its amendments, it was narrowed down to 483 pages. So just so you all know, it was really difficult to read all of it and share all the information. So I'm just going to share the very comprehensive highlights of the bill, and just the main key takeaways. So on Division A, which is the Border Security for American Act. So Division A requires Department of Homeland Security, which is DHS, to deploy physical barriers, technical infrastructure, technology, and personnel along the border where it's most effective. So it's going to fund additional border security around our borders. It also authorizes for $35 billion in funding to enhance and improve infrastructure and technology between ports of entry. And it also reforms the U.S. asylum system to make a final determination of asylum eligibility for asylum seekers at the border within 60 days. Now, this sounds a lot of money, and it sounds like, like especially right now at these times, like, where are we going to get this money? That is where immigrants come, and it shows the immigrant power is, we are going to be paying and funding towards these goals that the bill outlines. So that means that it's going to be a paid via immigration infrastructure fund, which is going to, there's going to be a 1.5 paycheck % of your bill that, so like how you pay taxes, so 1.5% of your whole total paycheck from work authorization immigrants will go towards funding this. So it would just be an additional tax that you'll be paying into the system. Like us who are DACA dreamers, and we have Social Security card, so we're able to work. We pay into Social Security and into all other federal systems that we're not able to benefit from. With this one, we would be paying that additional 1.5% to fund these mandatory requirements. And then what that means is that this would also focus on basically directing the bill to implement a biometric exit data system on all air, land, and seaports within 5 years, and authorizes 100 million in funding. And so all of that is going to be, like I said, funded from immigrants. For Division B, which is the American Dream and Promise. So this division, the purpose of it is that it will provide legal protection and permanent status pathways for Dreamers, TPS, and long-term undocumented immigrants. So this means that it will provide a conditional permanent status for Dreamers who arrived before age 18 and have lived in the U.S. for at least 3 years and have a clean record and meet educational and military service work history requirements. And so, so the bill, like I said, provides DACA recipients a certain temporary protective status to adjust to lawful status. So what this means is that DACA, if you're currently a DACA recipient or a dreamer, you would be eligible for a conditional permanent resident status, so valid up to 10 years, that will protect you from deportation, allow you to work legally in the United States, and permit you to travel outside the country as long as you qualify for this conditional permanent status. To qualify as a conditional permanent resident, like I said, you have to have been living in the United States for at least 3 years. You have to have had entered the U.S. Under the age of 18, and you have to have graduated high school or be enrolled in a secondary school. Now, how to remove the conditional basis of your status? So for you to remove the conditional basis of 10 years and automatically apply for a lawful permanent resident, to be a lawful permanent resident, which is the LPR, you would have to have obtained a college or graduate degree, serve at least 3 years in the military, or be employed and working for at least 4 years. And so if you meet those requirements, you would be able to apply for that, the lawful permanent residency. And then the application fee for this is $495. And like Julieta stated, that was for 2023. It might change as this bill gets introduced or progresses. And then the bill would extend in-state tuition access for higher education for Dreamers and DACA recipients. Now for TPS holders, so this section also includes a version of the American Promise Act, which allows certain TPS and Deferred Enforcement Departure, DED holders, to adjust to lawful permanent residency, which is the LPR status. It will allow it could allow around 335,000 current TPS holders to continue to live in the United States with a more permanent housing and status. So TPS holders would be eligible for LPR status if they had been continuously present in the U.S. for at least 3 years and were eligible for TPS status as of March 8. At that time was March 8, 2021. In my research that I saw, they still want to keep the March 8 date, but they would just adjust it to whatever year that is introduced. And meet certain other requirements, including background checks. The provision would generally help most TPS recipients from El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, but the cutoff date would be to not include those from Venezuela, Afghanistan, Haiti, and Ukraine, as those did not get as much support from the Republican Party. Now, keep in mind, like I said again, this is what's more 2023. We are hoping that if we are going to be supporting this bill, that when we do those outreach calls, that we ask that they're inclusive of everybody and not exclude anyone. This bill in the beginning was inclusive of everybody, and then as it went through its amendments, it did exclude persons from certain jurisdictions. The application fee for TPS holders would be $1,140. And then this bill, the Plan Dignidad, will also open a program, so called the Dignity Program, that would allow undocumented immigrants in the US to earn legal status if they pass a criminal background check, pay back any taxes owed, and meet other requirements. Participants must also pay restitution to be eligible. So with the Dignidad program, the bill establishes a 7-year deferred action program that would grant employment and travel authorization to undocumented residents who have been continuously living in the US for at least 5 years before the bill was enacted. So under the program, participants must pay a fine and contribute to the American Worker Fund, also which would be a new fund through this act. And the program will require participants to pay taxes and enroll in healthcare coverage while bearing use of any federal means-tested benefits or entitlement programs. During the duration of the program, participants will need to be gainfully employed or in school for at least 4 years with limited exceptions. All non-citizens who are present in the United States without lawful status are directed to depart if they do not apply for the Dignity Program or participate in other alternatives. Restitution in good standing. So what this means is that participants must pay a total of $5,000 over 7 years of the program. So they would need to check in with DHS every 2 years for an appointment or participate in other alternatives. So that would be going into DHS for an appointment and checking in with an immigration officer. They will also need to continue legal presence. So what that means is those who successfully complete the Dignidad program would have 2 avenues to continue here in the United States with legal presence. One would be the dignity status. So that would be a 5-year lawful status with employment authorization and the ability to re-enter the US, which can be renewed every 5 years. The second one would be the redemption program. So that is a 5-year conditional redemption status with unemployment and travel authorization. Individuals must complete the 7-year Dignidad program to qualify. Upon completion of the redemption program, individuals could have an opportunity to adjust to lawful permanent residence status, which is the LPR status. So individuals must also learn English and US civics exam and contribute to their community, including through local volunteer work or continued contributions into the American Worker Fund, with over 2,500 hours of volunteer work. This would also have implementation of mandatory e-verify systems and certifications of a fully secure border must be completed before individuals can obtain their legal status. So must show that whatever work that they did, that they have met the requirements of e-verify. And then the American Worker Fund, so that means that this bill will establish a fund with contributions from the Dignity and Redemption programs. The fund would manage grants to states and organizations to help U.S. citizens looking for work or transitioning to different careers. The grant will cover apprenticeships, work-based, earned and learned programs, and educational opportunities for high-demand careers. The bill aims to cover the upskill or to retrain at least one American worker for every participant in the Dignidad program. So as you know, we are getting work for our money here. So basically, like I said, it's really long, lots of wording here. But if this bill passes and you're going to be wanting to be part of the Dignidad Act, there are going to be 2 paths basically that you can take. One is the restitution one is the Dignidad status, which is that 5-year lawful status with employment authorization, and you're able to leave and enter in the United States while you're working. But you're not looking into adjusting to become a citizen, right? The next one is the redemption status. That's the ones for folks who need who have that first Dignidad status, which is that 5-year conditional redemption, and then they meet an additional 7 years. So, hagan las matemáticas. 5 plus 7?
Much.
A lot, right. So then once they meet that, then they're able to become US citizens. Okay.
years.
12 years later.
Yeah.
Yes. And then also not only will our money to fund us to be able to be part of these programs, that would be us that would have to pay $5,000 within the 5 years, and then for the 7 years, an additional $5,000. But also we would basically create a fund from our money, from our tax, from our 1.5% tax, that would basically create a grant for each state to be able to use some of our funding to support an American citizen. And so our money will go towards their benefits. Our money will go to ensure that they're in school, that they're able to get the jobs, so that we can prove, as immigrants can prove, that we are not taking their jobs, but yet we're being a beneficiary to the United States. Okay. And the reason I wanted to go into that is because that's sometimes the cons that a lot of folks have against the Dignidad Act. The next thing here is the H-2B cap relief. So that is a returning worker. So it includes any worker who entered on an HB2 visa for seasonal guest workers or any of the provisions, the previous 3 fiscal years. So that is the Division C, which is the Improving Seasonal Guest Worker Opportunities. So this basically would just create a better and improved H-2B temporary visa system. So it would provide flexibility for employers during peak season. So if an employer needs to hire a worker, but they don't want the worker to be, the worker to have the 2 options that we just discussed, they would be able to hire some temporary workers. It would create less paperwork reduction and workplace protections for workers. That's also sometimes not seen as a benefit because these are only temporary workers. Some employers will not offer the same protections that they would to an American citizen or anybody that is under the Dignidad Act. And then there will also be employer accountability. So higher penalties for fraud, misrepresentation, and unsafe conditions. And then there's also a program integrity, which is that it would improve oversight and employer notifications. So with that, this will create a program under the Certified Agricultural Worker Act, which is the CA. So the CA visa would be available for unauthorized immigrants who have spent at least 180 days in the last 2 years in agricultural employment. And then for unauthorized farm workers who have not worked enough days to qualify for the additional H-2A visa, they would be available to work with their lower threshold for at least 100 days over the next 3 years. And then after successfully maintaining either 8 years of CA status or 4 years of CA status plus 10 years of previous agricultural work experience, unauthorized farm workers will be able to apply for lawful permanent residence status, which is the LPR status. So with the improving seasonal guest worker opportunities, creating the CA program from the H-2B program, what that means is that when it says unauthorized workers, is that these workers are only coming in when there's need, right? And so they're not to stay here for long periods of time unless the employer requires them. And so as they are here, if they're here for 8 years plus an additional 10 years, which is very long, if they are one of these agricultural workers, then they would be able to apply for status, lawful permanent status. Okay. So next is the American Agricultural Dominance Act. So I'll just talk about that. I'm moving very slow here. So that was the CAL program. And then so next is the Division E, which is the American Prosperity and Competitiveness Act. So this means that this bill will update aspects of the U.S. legal immigration system with an aim towards protecting family unity, reducing backlogs, and improving employment-based opportunities. So for spouses of children of those who have the LPR visa, that is the visa after the 10 years, or if you're a DACA recipient, you're able to change into that visa if you meet those requirements. The bill would exempt spouses and minor children of lawful permanent residents from current family preferences green card caps. The 89,000 annual visas that normally go to spouses and minor children of LPRs, which is the F2A category, will be reassigned to the F1, which is an unmarried sons and daughters age of 21 and over U.S. citizens plan for the family preference category. So increasing the numbers of visas for that group to 23,000 instead of 111,000. So what that means is that if you are able to change your status to an LPR status, your spouses and children would be able to adjust at the same time as you and not have to wait till you petition for them at the same time. With this as well, I think oh, yeah, that's it. Sorry. Okay, never mind. It would also create the elimination of backlogs. So the legal visa backlog is reduced to a maximum of 10 years. So individuals who have been waiting in the backlog, either through a family or an employment-based visa for over 10 years, will receive that visa. So as soon as this act gets enacted, if they had been waiting on the visa backlog for over 10 years, they would automatically be able to get their visa or their adjustment. And then there will also be country caps. So this bill will raise the green card cap per county from 7% to 15% of the total number of employment-based or family-sponsored preferred visas each year. So what this means is that it will reduce and eventually eliminate country-specific backlogs when combined with other reforms. So as we know, right now, the backlog for you to petition somebody from Mexico, it's over 20 years, almost 24 years now. This will remove that backlog by increasing by 15% the amount of petitions you can request. Then for documented dreamers, so the bill will protect documented dreamers from aging out of their status once they turn 21 due to delay in visa availability. So if you're over 21 and you are a dreamer, or let's say that your parents try to petition you or somebody's trying to petition you and you're over 21, this will eliminate that. So there will not be an age cap. For the F1 visas for international student, the bill would change the F student visa reserved for international students to be a dual intent visa. So in other words, international students will no longer be required to demonstrate their intention to go back to their home country after completing their status, but then they can go also they can also choose the two pathways that the Plan Dignidad offers, and they don't have to go back to their home country. They can adjust to whatever path they want to take. And then for the employment-based visas, the bill would prevent derivatives, which are their children and spouses, from being counted against annual visa totals. So under this provision, only the principal applicant will count as part of the visa numbers. So this provision could increase the annual number of high-skilled workers by 50% without raising visa caps. So as you know, is that when you're requesting an employment visa, you will have to, do separate applications for your spouse and your children. And it counts them as like a visa number. This will remove that cap that only the applicant will be counted. And then for the H-4 visa work authorization, so under this provision, the spouses of H-1B visa immigrants will automatically be granted work authorization upon receiving their H-4 visa. So for anybody that is coming in from a visa for a work authorization visa, their spouses will also receive work authorization, even though they didn't apply to come in through that employer, but they're able to stay here and work here. And then there will also be an O visa eligibility. So the bill would create a presumption of eligibility for an O visa. So this visa will be reserved for individuals with que sean excelentes, pues. That word always gets me.
Extraordinary.
Gracias, Julieta. Okay. For students, Ivan is laughing at me. I'm sorry. For students who have earned a doctoral degree in STEM or anything related to the medical field, like engineering, anything STEM related, who have earned a doctor's degree would be able to qualify for this O visa. And then the bill would also create an immigration agency coordinator to oversee immigration functions. So that would be a new kind of like immigration agency within USCIS. So the Department of State and the Department of Labor will authorize $3.5 billion to help improve processing and reducing visas and work authorization backlogs. So in a way, this bill is trying to update the current immigration system, kind of like Canada, where you, if you're like a skilled worker, you're able to apply, you know, to Canada to the program, and then each state kind of determines whether they need that worker and you come in. In this case, it would be a federal requirement that would decide that, but it would be the new agency that would be created to decide how many workers it allows in. But this would be open to everybody within the United States right now. So if the Dignidad gets acted, depending on which category, like if you're outside of the United States, you would either fall into a visa category or agricultural worker or just like an outside category. If you're within the United States, you would qualify, you would need to decide what path you want to take or which one of the two paths do you want to take. And if you're like a dreamer, TPS, or DED person, then you would be able to get a quicker lawful permanent status, which is that LPR. What are the pros of the Dignity Act? So, bipartisan approach, legal status without citizenship mandate. Yo como ustedes, we were like, I want to become a citizen. I guess that there's a lot of people out there who don't want to become a citizen. They just want to be able to work here, make their money, and then go back to their home country and be able to travel back and forth. So that gives them that flexibility. And then if you're a dreamer or TPS, you have those protections. You're not going to be living in fear about having to renew every 2 years. It also will boost economic investment for the United States, as you all saw how much money is going to be brought into the United States from immigrants. It will create strong border and security measures. So as you also saw, this bill, when it gets enacted, it's going to create or add additional staffing to for border security. And then it will reduce illegal immigration, because in reality, there's not going to be illegal immigrants at that point. Like everybody in the United States has an option to fit within a category, right? And so there's really not going to be any, the wording legal immigrant would be non-existent. And then for 7, it would create a restorative justice frame. I'm okay with that word. But anyways, it's supposed to say like it's restorative justice. It's going to, you know, be everybody gets to benefit from it. And then the cons. What is the cons of the Dignity Act? So there's no direct path to citizenship. So you can't automatically apply for citizenship after this gets enacted. Like I said, there's that 5 years, 10 years. As you saw, some of the visas have to complete 5 and then 7 years. There are very strict eligibility criteria. So for any path that you want to take, or for anybody that's coming from the outside, they have to meet very strict eligibility criteria. And then there is a heavy emphasis on enforcement. And so what that means is that you have to have a clean background check. And anything that's considered like a high crime, if you have committed high crimes, you wouldn't qualify for this. And since there's no more illegal immigration, you would have to go back to your home country. And then there is mandatory e-verify. So because everybody will have at some point, whatever path they take, they're going to have a work authorization card and a social security number. Mandatory e-verifies are going to be required, which means that everybody in the United States that's an employer will have to do the mandatory e-verifies. No longer, if an employer pays you under the table, or what that means is that if they pay you cash and they don't pay you through payroll, that employer will face legal fees, but then also that worker, if that worker does mandatory e-verify and they can't prove that they have a work card, then they would be basically detained and deported, and then that employer would be penalized. That is because they want to avoid employers paying workers under the table so that they're able to pay them through the payroll so that they're able to get that 1.5% tax. Remember that tax that's going to fund a lot of the services that they want. And then there's going to be an asylum and humanitarian camps. Oh, I didn't talk about that. Where's my notes? So the bill would create 5 humanitarian camps, known as HCs. So this would be managed by CBP along the southern border. So migrants would be held in those facilities. So asylum officers will conduct asylum interviews and make final determinations on those at those campuses. So migrants would have access to medical staff, licensed social workers, mental health professionals, child advocates, and private organizations that provide humanitarian assistance and legal counsel. And so if you're if you're coming through an asylum visa, you wouldn't apply for it at the border, but you would be at this camp. And then when this bill first got enacted, it didn't have a time limitation of how long these people had to be in camps. But then as the bill was progressing, there was some amendment language that they wanted folks to be in camps for at least 5 years. To me, that's crazy. It's like living in a shelter for 5 years with no legal status or no legal avenue. And so that's a huge con. And then limited relief for new arrivals. So there's, like I said, if you're a new arrival and you're coming in, if you're not already in the United States, you don't qualify automatically for the Dignidad Act in those 2 options. So you're not going to have like a long-term relief. You either have that temporary visa, you're a temporary worker, but there's not really relief for them. It's kind of excluding if you weren't within the United States when this got enacted, it just excludes everybody else that's out. So a lot of folks believe that this will create a new wave of immigrants. It will create basically we would see new forms of immigration happening. Because as you know, like I said, there's not going to be no longer any illegal, the word illegal immigrant wouldn't really exist. But those who come in, who don't have their relief, we are unsure what that's going to look like. Any questions? I know that was a lot and I didn't cover it all. Like I said, it's over 400 pages, y'all. And it's a lot of tedious information, but if anybody has questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I think also one of the things to mention before you can take some questions is that it is a lot of information and we probably have to revisit soon, but and I say this for myself because obviously there's not going to be a perfect bill that ever gets introduced that everybody's just happy with. So I think we have to keep that in mind. But as I kept hearing, I just kept feeling more and more heartbroken. So I had to remind myself okay, what are the pros, what are the cons? But it just seems like it has just a lot going on.
Lo que más me agarra a mí is the fact that you're oh, you get to anyways, I have my own opinions, but something to understand about this bill too is that if it does pass and it gets enacted, it's not forever. The new Congress can either make changes to this bill, make amendments to it, and then reintroduce it as something else, or make conditional regulations on the bill, right? So if they say if in the beginning it was a bill that was going to be 10 years plus those 5 years, so creo que era 10 plus 7. So then after, let's say it gets introduced, it starts as that within the first 4 years, but then the new congressional folks that come in, if they make amendments, they're no, you know what? They have proved it has been beneficial. Let's lower those standards and those years to 3 years or 2 years. And so it could change over time.
Okay, any other questions or comments, concerns? Now we can open the floor, ¿verdad, Diana?
Yeah. Enrique?
Okay, and then also I'm gonna. Okay, my friends, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you will not get to listen in to our private conversations. So after this, we discussed as a group, but that part is not recorded. I wanted to make sure and share the information about Plan Dignidad just for everybody to hear because it's important that we all get informed. But as DIA, Dreamers in Action, there's still a lot to figure out as DIA to decide if and when this bill passes, how we're going to get involved, and if we are going to get involved. So there's still a lot that needs to happen. But if you want to be part of the app, make sure that you check out the caption of this video where you can access the link for our new member orientations.